Hello everyone, and today we are back for another Loomian Legacy Top 5 video, and we're going to be ranking the top 20 PVP Loomians in all of Loomian Legacy. I made a top 15 list last year, and that video got over 38,000 views, which is by far the most popular video on my channel. I'm going to be making an updated version to this, so let's head right to it. Number 20 onto this list is going to be Krab Tana. Now, a lot of people might be shocked that Krab Tana is on the list altogether, but I have my reasonings. This thing hits extremely hard. It has a melee attack stat of 100, while also having a speed stat of 100. It's not the bulkiest thing in the world, but what Krab Tana does well is as a revenge killer. With Boots Vengeance, this Loomian can absolutely carry you. Since it has Rogue Assault and Razor Slash Stab, this thing can destroy a lot of different Loomians, and with Wave Wrecker as a coverage move, Krab Tana can be extremely dangerous. This thing hits really hard and has good coverage. And it's not to say that there aren't Loomians to beat it, because a lot of melee tanks can soak a Vengeance hit, at least one. But if that opposing Loomian is chipped, Krab Tana is going to destroy the opposing team. You can even run a Drudge set with Razor Sharp. That set is also very dangerous, but you kind of need two Drudges in order to be very powerful, so the Drudge set is decent, but the Vengeance set is really powerful. And the Vengeance set is honestly the reason why Krab Tana is on the list, because this thing is pretty good. It hits pretty hard. Even without the Vengeance boost, it can be very dangerous because of its good coverage, but with the Vengeance boost, makes this the best revenge killer in all of Loomian Legacy, and that's why Krab Tana is on the list. Number 19 on the list is going to be Eruptodon. Now, Eruptodon by itself might not even be a top 30 Loomian, but what gets Eruptodon on the list is its Soul Burst. It gains speed, it gains extra ranged attack, and it also has the best soul move out of all the Soul Bursts. Hellstorm is awesome, because not only does it do a lot of damage, but it also does damage over time to the opposing Loomians, which is awesome for defeating clutch plushies. Not to mention, this thing also has Magnify and Accelerate. So if you get an Accelerate and a Magnify off, your Eruptodon is going to sweep. Even the non-Soul Burst version can be very dangerous if not careful. And yeah, the Soul Burst is the reason why it is on the list. It's because its Soul Burst is really powerful. Now, the normal Eruptodon is decent. It can actually hit decently hard, but you kind of need to use the Soul Burst in order to get your full usage out of Eruptodon. This thing is awesome. Has a very good defensive typing, and while it doesn't have the best bulk, it hits really hard. It's one of the best wall breakers in all of Loomian Legacy. The biggest flaw with Eruptodon, though, is that it can be easily revenge killed, mainly by water type, so you do gotta be kind of careful. Despite that, though, Soul Burst Eruptodon makes the list. Number 18 onto this list is going to be one of the new Loomians. It's Damore. Damore is awesome. The Earth Toxic type is awesome, and it has some awesome moves. It's a Baffle Loomian that can place Icicle Traps. I think Cramboss also has that as well, but Damore is the best because it can actually heal health back with the Sponge ability. And if you don't want to run Sponge, you could run Spine Breaker and to get Poison Barbs onto the field if hit by a melee type attack. You also have Earthquake Toxic, which is awesome because you can actually hit a lot of different Loomians. The only Loomian you really can't hit is Secret Ability Stratos Saur, but even then, you could still baffle out, so it isn't even the biggest deal to begin with. And if you swap into a water type with the Sponge ability, you're able to actually get health back on Damore. This Loomian is awesome. The fact that it can place Icicle Traps and baffle out of a bad situation is the reason Damore is on the list. It also has an amazing defensive typing, good bulk on both sides, and it's just awesome. It's a very good Loomian to combo with a lot of different wall breakers. So yeah, that's why Damore is on the list. Although there are a couple other Baffle Loomians that are a little higher than Damore. Despite that though, Damore is awesome, it hits decently hard, has good bulk, and can baffle out of rough situations. That's why it's on the list. Number 17 onto this list is going to be a shocker because it's Aalos. And a lot of people might think that Aalos should not belong on the list altogether. But I have my reasonings. It's because of Drudge, let's be honest here. The thing is with Aalos is that it always had great stats. Had good bulk, great health, and a good speed stat. But the problem is that its speed stat was never high enough in order to be very dangerous. But with Drudge, makes this thing the best Drudge Loomian in all of Loomian Legacy. After a Drudge, you can sweep teams very easily. I'm serious. After one Drudge, your Aalos has a very good chance of sweeping the opposing team, especially if you're running the secret ability, which is aggressive. It also has very good coverage moves like Rogue Assault and Gnarly Gash, meaning you can actually hit those pesky water types that you can't hit originally. Not to mention that with Aqua Body, makes Aalos the best Loomian on a full Ice-type team, because no other Ice types can soak Fire-type attacks. But Aalos can with the Aqua Body ability, which is awesome. And even without it, you can utilize aggressive after a Drudge, and this thing can be very powerful. It can also run Brawn Boost and Driving Force and Icicle Traps, which makes this thing a really solid Loomian. Number 16 onto this list is going to be Your Snack. Yes, Your Snack is on this list because this Loomian is fantastic. It has the tank ability, it has Slap Down, it has Priority, it has Baffle. Your Snack pretty much has everything. Great bulk, a good defensive typing, pivot, slap down utility, priority utility, even with Heartbreak, the chance to daze the opposing Loomian. That makes Your Snack extremely dangerous. It's honestly the most balanced Loomian in all of Loomian Legacy. This Loomian sounds like an easy top 10 pick, and it is really powerful. But there are a couple reasons why it isn't in the top 10 and only just in the top 20. The biggest reason is that it doesn't really have any offensive pressure. This thing does not hit hard. There are times where you can't even 3-shot Loomians that you hit super effectively, which does hold Your Snack back. But despite that, it still has everything despite that. Like, it has Slapdown utility, it has Priority, it has Baffle. And with Health Amulet, you can easily get health back, which is awesome. I mean, this thing can live quad-effective Spirit-type hits most of the time. It's nuts how bulky Your Snack is. And despite not being a huge offensive threat, this thing can be very good for pivot and stall teams alike. And that's why Your Snack is on the list. It's amazingly powerful. Number 15 onto this list is going to be Luminami. Everyone knew Luminami was going to make the list somewhere because it has Power Napper and Flash and Flee. Meaning that if you click Flash and Flee, you get damage, you pivot out into another Loomian, and you get free health back from swapping out. And yes, I do know that Infernix also has Power Napper, but it doesn't utilize it as well as Luminami because, while Infernix has better range bulk, it's also not as slow and it doesn't have pivot. While Luminami has a pretty good defensive typing, has really good coverage. I mean, it can run Mega Chomp, Thunder Chomp, Frost Beam, and it's eventually going to get Radiant Rush as well, which will make this thing even better. It can also have Maroon that can completely stunt the energy calcs to the opposing Loomians, and this thing could pivot out of a lot of really rough situations. Even those pesky plant types really don't want to swap in because of the threat of Frost Beam and Mega Chomp. Luminami's awesome, and while this thing doesn't have that much offensive pressure just like Your Snack, it does hit a little bit harder and has better coverage, while also being able to utilize Power Napper a lot more easier than Your Snack. With that out of the way, that's why Luminami is on the list. It's awesome, and it definitely belongs in the top 15. Number 14 onto this list is going to be Helv Vantic. Helv Vantic was actually off my top 15 last year, as this was the first Loomian out. But it got a little better in my opinion, mainly because of how hard it hits and its really good speed stat. Think of Aalos, but a little bit better. And while this thing does not have Drudge, that's not what Helv Vantic does its best. The boots Helv Vantic set is awesome. You run specialty boots, and you have 4 coverage moves. That's what makes Helv Vantic amazing. It can pretty much hit anything in the entire game besides Tyrex and Hembrer, which is insane. You could run Poison, and even then you could run Poison to poison those Hembers and Tyrexos, so it doesn't even matter to begin with. You could run the Pitch Black set to utilize Gnarly Gash. You could run the Aggressive set to sweep the opposing teams. You could even run the secret ability if you really want to, although the secret ability really isn't that good. Although I guess you could use that for the Helv Vantic set, so I guess that can also be used as well. But Helv Vantic is mainly at its best as a revenge killer. You could use it as a revenge killer or as a boots wall breaker. That's what makes Helv Vantic awesome, and it's always really threatening to beat. And that's why Helv Vantic is on this list. It's fantastic. Number 13 onto this list is going to be Imperior. Now, I wasn't sure on how to talk about Imperior because this Loomian has a lot of amazing things, but a couple things that aren't the greatest. Let's talk about the things that are OP, resentful. That's the reason it's on the list altogether. If KO'd from full health, you can get rid of the opposing Loomian's health. That's why Imperior is going to get nerfed, because if KO'd from full health, you could actually use all of your 189 health, and that will be used on the opposing Loomian that KO'd you. That's OP. You could use this as a sack, and then have that opposing threat go down. And even then, Imperior has a very good speed stat of 100, meaning that you're going to outspeed most threats. So you're going to get an attack off, chip the opposing Loomian, and then they KO you, and then that other Loomian is dead. This thing even has fadeaway pivot, meaning they could actually pivot out of bad matchups if you don't want to sack your Imperior yet. It also has Boom Bash and Shrewd Blast coverage, which is also really good for it as well. And while this thing isn't the greatest Loomian offensively, that Resentful ability is probably one of the best abilities in the entire game, and that's why Imperior is on this list. It's fantastic, and it can be used in very clutch situations. Number 12 onto this list is going to be Teclips. Last year, this was in my top 3, but Teclips has fallen a little bit. But it's not Teclips' fault at all. It's because it has Total Eclipse. This Loomian has more immunities than weaknesses. And when hit by a light or dark type attack, it gains a speed boost, which is awesome for Teclips. And while it can get hit by Baffle now, which is a nerf, this thing still has Dark Surge and Gamma Pulse. Light, dark, offensive stab is the best offensive coverage in the entire game. The only Loomians that can really swap into light, dark offense is bug types. And even then, there aren't many bug types that are that good right now. Not to mention, you have Raging Howl to hit other Teclipses, and you could use Raging Howl to skip through Scapegoats, which is awesome. You do only have Disperse to set up, but I think if it had Peace of Mind, I think it would be kind of broken. So I'm kind of glad that it's just Disperse. So, yeah, Teclips is awesome. It only has 2 weaknesses as well. Like, it's only weak to Bug and Metal. And while the Metal weakness does stink, the Bug weakness isn't so much because, again, there aren't many Bug types that can come in on a Teclips. This thing is awesome. It still is a very good Loomian despite falling out of the top 10. Number 11 onto this list is going to be the best starter in Tatb. Yes, Tatb is the highest ranked starter, and it's mainly because of how hard it hits. This thing hits hard. It has 120 power stab with the Awakening boost and 126 melee attack. This thing hits hard. Even though all toxic types resist your hits, you can still 2-shot most of them with Tatb. That's nuts. Not to mention, you can also barter specialty boots away. You could throw poisons. You could set up bulk ups. This thing is probably the best boots Loomian in all of Loomian Legacy because it's a fast Loomian that hits really, really hard. You're also going to outspeed most boots users as well. Like, you don't even have to run nimble on this thing to outspeed other threats. It hits that hard, and it is that fast. That deserves to be on this list. It is out of the top 10, though, because you can't really swap into this. Like, you can't bring this into any good matchups because it's frail as heck. It also has a lot of weaknesses. Its defensive typing is kind of trash. And while it does have other coverage moves like Splitting Headache and Toxic Tail, they aren't as good as Jungle Jetsu and Timber Thrash. And you would rather run either Barter or Poison in order to utilize Tatb's full move pool. Despite that, though, this thing is a heavy wall breaker, and it deserves to be number 11 on the list. We're into our top 10 now, and number 10 onto this list is Gargolem Defense Form, the best out of all the Gargolem forms. This thing is awesome. The Earth-Air defensive typing is very good. It has Mudslide, Barbs, Icicle Traps, and Driving Force. This thing also has the most melee and range defense out of any Loomian in all of Loomian Legacy. And while its health stat isn't the greatest, if you add TPs into your health, it won't matter regardless. This thing is awesome. You could put barbs and icicle traps down, and then driving force the opposing Loomians out. And since this is a Gargolem, you could run so many different sets with this Loomian. You could run Provoke, you could run Driving Force, you could run Empathize to gain health back, you could run Slap Down. Heck, you can even run a attacking defensive form if you really want. And even though Gargolem attack form does hit a lot harder, it's super frail, so that's the reason why Gargolem attack form isn't on the list. As for Gargolem defense form, the reason why it is on the list, it's because it can utilize the Gargolem moveset the best. And it also has amazing defenses, a good defensive typing, and the fact that it can place icicle traps and barbs while driving forcing the opposing Loomians makes this thing really hard to beat. That's why it's in the top 10. Number 9 onto this list is going to be Obsidron, last year's champion, last year's best Loomian in all of Loomian Legacy. And it's still a top 10 Loomian. Obsidron is still a monster. With resilience, it can gain a melee defense increase, it has Drudge, it has Body Crash, Primal Slash, which is awesome. All the Loomians that can't get hit by Body Crash can get hit super effectively by Primal Slash, which is awesome. You also have Beast Slumber, which can gain you HP back while also increasing your melee and range defense by 1. And let's not even mention all the coverage options Obsidron has. And while it isn't always going to use these coverage options, the fact that it has it makes this thing very dangerous. It can run Earthquake, it can run Mega Chomp, heck, you could even run Mud Spatter if you really want to. And while this thing isn't the fastest, it's actually very fast for a tanky Loomian at 65 speed. And after a couple resilience boosts, this thing can be very scary, and then after a Drudge, this melee tank eventually becomes a late game sweeper. That's how OP Obsidron is, and even though resilience was nerfed, so only contact moves can activate it, you can still swap this into a contact move and then get +1 melee defense. That makes Obsidron extremely dangerous. It's still very powerful. Number 8 onto this list is going to be Mutagon. Now, next year, when we make this list next year, Mutagon might not even be in the top 20, mainly because it is going to lose Quick Punch. But despite that, Mutagon does have a lot of good stuff. It has Brawn Boost Quick Punch. We already know how OP that is, but let's look at the Mutagons without Quick Punch. You still have the tank ability. You still have Telekinetic Sweep, which is awesome. The toxic types that you can't hit with Mega Punch, you can hit super effectively with Telekinetic Sweep. And when you lose Quick Punch, you're going to run Frost Punch that can hit those pesky air types super effectively, which is awesome. This isn't the fastest Loomian in the world. It only has 71 speed, and that's why Mutagon losing Quick Punch is a really huge deal. But despite that, though, I could still see this Loomian being very dangerous, especially to really bulky teams. And with the tank ability, you could even run a Brawn Boost Rageful plushie set that could get your Mutagon to +4 in one attack, which can pretty much be any Loomian in the entire game, which is kind of funny. So yeah, Mutagon is still very OP. Even when it loses Quick Punch, it's still going to be very powerful. Number 7 onto this list is going to be Cosmere Unleashed form. Now, Cosmere Crack form almost made the list, but it did just fall a little bit short. Because Cosmere Unleashed is a lot better. Has 134 melee attack. It has bulk up setup. It has Slumber to heal health back. Has a very fast speed stat, and its defensive typing is also pretty good. Not to mention that it has Surrogate. You could Surrogate any ability in the entire game. And if you give Cosmere Unleashed Appetite, good luck beating it. This thing is going to sweep your team. Even those pesky metal types. That's the reason why Cosmere Crack form didn't make the list, because it gets walled by metal types. And even though Cosmere Unleashed can technically still get walled by them, you could use Appetite, you could use Wise, and not to mention, you can use Specmeor. Specmeor with specialty boots is really OP, and one of those Loomians that are really hard to beat unless you have a metal type that can soak multiple hits. which not really any metal types can soak multiple hits from a Specmeor, so yeah, that's why Cosmere Unleashed is on the list. It can run so many different sets, and even though it can't hit metal types that hard, the fact that it can use any ability in the entire game with its Seargate ability makes it broken. Number 6 onto this list is going to be Novadius. A lot of people think Novadius is a top 5 Loomian, while other people think it should be out of the top 20 altogether. I am on the side of Novadius being overpowered, mainly because it has 129 attack on both sides. It has amazing coverage. Fire Ice is an awesome offensive typing, and when you combine that with Ancient Stab, with Obsidian Heart, yeah, Novadius is pretty powerful. And that doesn't even mention all of the moves Novadius can have. It can run Burn Up. It can run both screens. It can run Icicle Traps. It can run Draco Beam. It can run Peace of Mind. It can run Bulk Up. It can run Boiling Press. It can run Deep Freeze. It can run all of the moves that Arcelos and Gladia can learn, which is awesome. The reason why Novadius isn't into the top 5, though, is because it does have only 101 speed. And while 101 speed is really good, faster Loomians can revenge kill Novadius because it has decent bulk, but it doesn't have amazing bulk. And not to mention, you are weak to a couple Loomians, meaning that Boots users can come in and revenge kill you most of the time. Despite that, though, Novadius is extremely OP, and it's one of those Loomians that you have no swap-ins for. We're into our top 5 now, and number 5 onto this list is going to be Stratos Saur. Now, some people might think Stratos Saur shouldn't be this high, but I have my reasonings. Stratos Saur can do everything. And when I mean everything, this thing can do everything. It can be used as an offensive Soul Burst sweeper. It can be used as a defensive stall Loomian. You could use this as a jumpstart Loomian. You could use this as a defensive tase set. You could use this as a magnify set. You could use a clutch rageful plushie set. This thing is awesome. Mainly because its defensive typing is amazing. It only has 2 weaknesses, that being fire and electric. And not only that, its Soul Burst form actually gains 119 speed. Not many Loomians can outspeed that, which is awesome. So if you can get a Magnify and then get into your Soul Burst Stratos Saur, this thing can sweep a lot of different Loomians. Even ranged tanks can't really swap in, because once you get a Magnify, you can 2-shot most of them, which is awesome. You can even run the defensive set, clutch plushie set. There's a lot of different sets you can run on Stratos Saur, and the reason why it is this high is because it's amazing as an offensive Loomian, as a defensive Loomian, and as a support Loomian. It's amazing at everything. Number 4 onto this list is going to be Pyro Lin. Yes, Pyro Lin is basically Stratos Saur. This Loomian can pretty much be good at everything. As an offensive Loomian and a defensive Loomian. This thing is awesome. Has great range bulk, and its melee bulk isn't bad because of its high health stat. Its speed is probably the biggest thing that holds Pyro Lin back. It doesn't have the fastest speed stat, it only has 66 speed. Despite that though, this thing has Peace of Mind and Rejuvenate. Yes, this Loomian has Rejuvenate, and its ability Fanning Flame is awesome. You basically lose your air type weakness, and you make that as your hidden strength. And not only that, it will still activate your Rageful plushie, meaning that after an air-type attack, you can go up to +3 in 1 turn. You could also run the Volcanic Pyro Lin, and that is the best Volcanic Loomian in all of Loomian Legacy. This thing also has Cure Lin coverage, meaning that it can pretty much hit anything in the entire game. That makes Pyro Lin really hard to beat, because you don't know what Pyro Lin set you're going to go up against. You don't know if you're going to go up against an annoying defensive set or a wall-breaking volcanic set. Pyro Lin is awesome. It definitely deserves to be in the top 5 of this list. Number 3 onto this list is going to be Gladia. Yep, Gladia is in the top 3. This thing is the ultimate wall breaker. It's faster than Novadius, and it hits really hard. There is kind of a flaw with Gladia, that it can't really hit metal types, but again, not many metal types can soak a Chilling Passion Frost Beam, because that's the thing. Chilling Passion gives you a 50% increase to all your Ice-type attacks. And with Frost Beam doing 90 power stab and 119 ranged attack, makes this thing unbelievably hard to beat. This thing also has Draco Beam, which does 130 power stab. And even better, it also has Deep Freeze, meaning you can hit those pesky water types as well. This thing even has screens. You can even run Far Enchantment, you can run Peace of Mind, you can run Icicle Traps, and its range defense is really high as well. It can actually soak a super effective hit on the range side as well. So not only is it a hard-hitting wall breaker, it can even be used as a range tank as well. Maybe not as a range tank, but you can keep it in onto a super effective move and expect it to live easily. That's why Gladia is in the top 3. It's really hard to beat. Number 2 onto this list is going to be one of the most broken Loomians in the entire game, in Metronet. Oh my gosh, Metronet was out of the top 15 last year, and I made a video explaining why it wasn't on the list. Fortunately for Metronet, it got a lot of new moves that made this thing better. It has a Soul Burst. Soul Burst Metronet is broken. And I know a lot of people think that the regular Metronet set is better than the Soul Burst set, mainly because of Splitting Headache and Mysterious Cloak. But Soul Burst Metronet has 147 range attack and 115 speed. Not to mention, you'll lifesteal health back. Yes, you can lifesteal health back. Its Mind Dark Stab is really good, and Pyrokinesis as a coverage move is awesome for Metronet. And even if you don't want to run Soul Burst, you could still run Splitting Headache and Barter to stun melee attackers. You can even run Hypnotize! So, the Hypnotize Peace of Mind set is unbelievably annoying to beat, and this thing has one of the best defensive typings as well, as it only has 2 weaknesses, that being to Fire and to Bug. This thing is awesome. This Loomian can do everything right. It even got Mega Punch now, so if you Soul Burst, you can actually beat those pesky bug types now, which is awesome. Metronet is broken, and it deserves to be number 2 onto this list. Honorable mentions onto this list, and yeah, there are like 30 other Loomians that deserve to be onto this list. This list was very hard to make. All the Loomians on this screen can easily be put onto the top 20. That's how good all these Loomians are. But the most notable out of all of these is Dragodine. Dragodine is out of the top 20. And that is with it having Draco Beam and Anomaly, which makes this thing really hard to beat. It even has better coverage in Jetstream, Eggstorm, and Mud Spatter. So, why isn't Dragodine on the list? It's because of its slow speed stat mainly. It only has 60 speed, and if you run specialty boots, you are stuck into a Draco Beam, meaning that you could swap into your Metal type or your Valkyrie, and then Revenge Kill it. Or go into something that outspeeds it and Revenge Kill it. It's easily Revenge Kill bait, and that's why Dragodine isn't on the list. But honestly, all of these Loomians can easily be put into your top 20. The best Loomian in all of Loomian Legacy is Charonix. Charonix can do everything, but just like Dragodine, it does have one weakness. It's its 51 speed stat. Other than that, this Loomian is unbeatable. This thing hits hard, has a good energy stat, has good bulk, has priority, and this has Magnify Lightspeed Ray. This thing is nuts. And if you KO a Loomian, you get health back from Reaper. This also has Frost Beam coverage, so not even plant types can swap into a Charonix. This also has Spite, meaning that tanky Loomians can't swap into a Charonix. You also have Gust to get rid of traps. You have Tricky Tactics. You have Frost Beam, Luster Loot to gain health back, Spectral Burst, Apparition, and you also have the best weather out of all the weather Loomians, Fog. The Fog weather is awesome, as it will disable every other Loomian's abilities besides Spirit types. And guess what Charonix is? A Spirit type, so your abilities will still be active. That doesn't even mention, it has the best defensive typing in all of Loomian Legacy, with only having one weakness to Metal. There's no contest. Charonix is by far the best Loomian in all of Loomian Legacy. And here it is, Charonix, the best Loomian in all of Loomian Legacy, and it's well deserved for the #1 spot. I hope you guys enjoyed this top 20 list. If there are some Loomians that I missed in the top 20, because let's be honest, there could be 50 Loomians that could be in these spots, please tell me in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see y'all all later. Bye-bye!